Today, I wanted to talk about what I consider my number one tip for software developers that want to get better at what they're doing. Now, a lot of the time, I hear people asking me, like, what books should I be reading? Like, what courses should I be taking online to be better as a software engineer? And a lot of the time, like, I don't refer to specific courses or specific books that they should read because I have a different thing that I think people should be doing to get them better at software engineering. And today, actually, this example comes from Milan Jovanovic, who's also a YouTuber. If you're watching my channel, odds are you're already subscribed to his. He's really big on YouTube, and he shared something on LinkedIn that I wanted to go over. So I'm going to start by sharing that, reading through it, and then giving some of my perspective on that. Alright, so Milan goes on to say, side projects made me a better software engineer. I tried to spend 30 to 45 minutes daily hacking away at my side project. And I focused on a few specific things, software architecture, and new libraries. And this is the key part that I wanted to talk about right after, which he says, sometimes I would try to do everything wrong on purpose. And this sounds kind of ridiculous, but he says, software architecture I didn't need, new libraries I will never use, unnecessary complexity, and over engineering. This wasn't a waste of time because I was on a mission. So I wanted to stop there and kind of reflect on these points. And I think one of the key things that I wanted to get across is that to start, I think that, and you probably, if you've seen my other videos, like I always say that I think the best way to get better at software development is truly to spend time writing code. So a lot of the time you'll hear me talk about things like I don't think like leet code problems are necessarily the best thing to be doing. I don't think that just like strictly watching YouTube videos and doing nothing else or just reading books or articles and not actually practicing coding are the way forward. I think that you should be focused on trying to build projects. But one of the things that I don't think I focused a lot on that Milan here says in his LinkedIn post, which is like I'm doing, like air quotes, like bad things on purpose, right? Like I'm over engineering, I'm looking at things that I probably will never use. And I think that this is really interesting because I've never actually, I guess, called it out for my own projects, but this is something that I absolutely do, absolutely have done for many years. And I do think that combining this point with this emphasis on just kind of focusing on building projects, I think that this point about kind of doing the wrong things, I'm again using air quotes, it's not necessarily the wrong things, maybe not best practices. I think that this is super important because it almost teaches you like the hard way, right? And I'm saying the hard way because, and I should use air quotes again, the hard way. It's not actually that it's bad or the wrong thing to do or that it's necessarily hard, but I think sometimes we have to learn about like over engineering things or building things from scratch to truly learn how things work. So I'll give you some examples in my own projects where I've built like logging infrastructure from the ground up. I've built TCP messaging from the ground up. I've built object serialization to and from JSON from the ground up. Like why? There's tons of libraries that do this kind of stuff. There's so many opportunities for us to leverage code from people who are truly experts in these areas to be able to move forward and make progress on our projects. But the point of working on these side projects for me, historically, has been that it's a playground for learning. So I think that there's a fundamental difference between if I were trying to work on projects that I like need to be shipping to customers, they're going to be, paying the bills, that kind of stuff. That's where I would be trying to, say like best practices, right? I want to be trying to not write everything from scratch. I want to look for popular, well-maintained NuGet packages to do difficult things that I'm not an expert in. I think that would be the right decision in that case. But when it comes to some of my own hobby projects where I'm trying to explore and learn, I definitely agree with this approach from Milan here about just you're on a mission to go learn about these things, and I think that when you start practicing by sort of following these patterns that might seem like anti-patterns in software development, you can actually learn a ton. So let's go back to his post and read the rest of what he had to say. So my theory was that I would learn valuable lessons and build an instinct of what bad engineering looks like. And this is what happened. I learned to spot these anti-patterns when they showed up in real projects. This helped me make better decisions and improve the quality of the software I built. Will this work for you? I can't say, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. So yeah, I mean, it's really hard to tell people like, oh, like just go do this and you're absolutely going to have the same experiences that I have. I certainly couldn't sit here and tell you like this is absolutely what you must do, because I think that if you're not truly set on that as a mission, like I'm going to go try these things to learn about them, even if it's not really the best practice, that you might be potentially reinforcing bad habits. But I think for me, again, I'll just restate it that this has worked really well for me. And I guess one other example I wanted to share that was probably if I look back at some of my code, like one of, I don't want to say like the worst architectural decision I've ever made, but it was a pattern that I wanted to try out that when I look at the structure of my solution that I built, it's like it feels quite chaotic. So for a long time, I was quite obsessed with trying to have interfaces for every C sharp class I have. And I actually went as far as trying to ensure that I had like an API project with only interfaces in it for every project that I had. And this way, I like essentially forced myself to always separate concrete implementations from interfaces of things. And when I took this pattern to an extreme, and I guess like maybe that's a good way to put it. If you see some of my other content or see me talking about things, you'll find that sometimes when I'm reflecting on my own experiences, I'm talking about essentially taking patterns to an extreme, but fully acknowledging that like I'm doing that for a reason. It's not what I suggest. But when I took this pattern to an extreme, just to kind of elaborate, I ended up having like a solution with hundreds of projects. I had interfaces and situations where I would only ever have a concrete class because it was like a data transfer object, a DTO. And that did not warrant an interface. Like it would never need a different implementation. So what ended up happening was that I end up having tons of what feels like duplicated code because I'd have an interface for a DTO or an interface for a simple class that would never have a different implementation. And even when it came time, like one of my arguments is like I like having interfaces for unit testing and mocking, but there were situations where the classes were so simple that having the interfaces, like it wasn't even a good argument, even though I fully support that perspective of having interfaces for testability. So anyway, going through that in one of my personal projects really allowed me to see like when you take something like that pattern to an extreme, it becomes completely unwieldy. So, okay, cool. Does that mean that it was the wrong thing to do? Does that mean that I should never have interfaces for my classes or I should never attempt to try and break out projects with interfaces? No, it just taught me that there's probably a sweet spot where, if I reflect on what I was trying to accomplish, I didn't have to go as far. And on that note, I would just say that when I follow this pattern, as Milan was saying in his LinkedIn post, like I I think that what I notice is that it always feels like there's a sweet spot for taking patterns and designs and architectures to a certain point, because when you basically follow it like religiously, right, and blindly, and you're just like, this is the pattern, I must do this, this is the law. um, you find yourself in situations where you're like, it doesn't feel good, but I said it was law, so I have to do it. And almost all the time, it feels like some pattern or design just starts to break down because it's truly ill suited in that situation. So I do think that personally that again, to reflect on this entire post, like my sort of suggestion for people of, I think you should be spending time building your own projects. I think that absolutely still stands as one of my top tips for people just to get better and build confidence and build experience outside of work. But the other thing that I would love to tack onto that, and I'm going to start trying to do a better job of it thanks to this post, is really like, you should try to explore different patterns and take things to an extreme just to try it out, but do it intentionally. Do it with the intent of learning where the boundaries of these things are so that you can know how to apply them better in real projects. So I just wanted to share that for today. Thanks for watching. Of course, if you're not already subscribed to Milan Jovanovic's channel, absolutely do that. I'm sure you are if you found my channel. So he has great content, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.